VOA News, I'm Gene Randall. The U.S. State Department is painting a grim picture in its annual human rights report. On Venezuela, it cites extrajudicial killings, the stifling of free expression, and restrictions on political participation. State also points to what it calls pervasive corruption and impunity among all security forces and in the Nicolas Maduro government, quote, trafficking in persons and the worst forms of child labor, which the government made minimal efforts to eliminate, unquote. On Iran, the report says the government's human rights record remained extremely poor and had worsened in several key areas in 2018. The Trump administration has adopted a wait-and-see attitude on what to do about Boeing 737 MAX 8 jetliners. Dozens of countries, including every member of the European Union, have grounded the aircraft until more is known about the latest MAX 8 crash in Ethiopia. We have a report from VOA correspondent Steve Herman.
Several U.S. senators are calling for the Federal Aviation Administration to order an immediate temporary grounding of the MAX 8 jet. Among them, Republican Senator Mitt Romney of Utah.
I think it makes sense to ground the aircraft until we have better information.
White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says the U.S. government is in the early stages of its investigation into the jet's second crash in Ethiopia, which on Sunday killed all 157 people on board. President Trump on Twitter on Tuesday complained airplanes are becoming far too complex to fly, but he did not call for grounding the MAX 8, which has a unique computerized anti-stall system. Steve Herman, VOA News, at the White House.
For all the day's news developments, we invite you to go online to voanews.com. You can also use the VOA News mobile app. This is VOA News. Once again, on the latest 737 MAX 8 crash, Ethiopia is deciding what to do with the black box recovered from the wreckage. AP's Charles de Ledesma has a report.
An Ethiopian Airlines spokesman says the black box from the Boeing jet that crashed and killed all 157 people on board will be sent overseas for analysis, but no country has been chosen yet. The company says it has a range of options for the data and voice records of the flight's last moments, but admits the nation doesn't have the capability to probe it domestically. Another key point is that one recorder is apparently partially damaged. Sunday's disaster is the second with a MAX 8 plane in just 5 months and has set off a wave of groundings of the planes around the world. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
It is another high-profile day in court for a prominent one-time member of the Trump team. The president's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, is to be sentenced here in Washington on conspiracy convictions. Here is AP correspondent Sagar Magani.
Manafort was sentenced last week to nearly 4 years in prison on bank and tax fraud charges and now faces up to 10 more years on separate counts in the special counsel's Russia probe. A federal judge says she'll give Manafort credit when deciding his sentence for accepting responsibility for his crimes and pleading guilty to conspiracy. A prosecutor, though, says Manafort does not deserve credit because he lied to investigators and a grand jury after pleading guilty. The judge will decide if the two sentences should run consecutively or at the same time. Sagar Magani at the White House.
Here in the United States, and perhaps around the world, there are day-after shockwaves related to a different kind of scandal. Different, but shocking all the same. Wealthy parents charged in a bribery scheme to get their children into what they considered the right schools. AP correspondent Tim McGuire has a report.
33 parents, from Emmy Award winner and Oscar-nominated actress Felicity Huffman to the co-chairman of an international law firm, are charged with paying some $25 million to Edge College and Career Network, or its charity, to either rig their children's entrance exams or bribe college coaches and administrators to get them in as student athletes. Former Stanford University Dean of Freshmen and author Julie Lythcott-Hames.
We have seen an increased obsession on the part of parents, particularly parents with means, in getting their kids to the quote-unquote right college at whatever cost.
The coaches worked at Yale, Stanford, Georgetown, Wake Forest, and others. A former Yale soccer coach pleaded guilty and helped build the case against the others. I'm Tim McGuire.
In Australia, convicted child abuser Cardinal George Pell, a former senior advisor to Pope Francis, has been sentenced to 6 years in prison for abusing 2 altar boys. He is the most senior Catholic official to be convicted of such offenses. No reaction so far from the Vatican. Gene Randall, VOA News.